also an international keynote speaker on gamification and creator of the Octalysis framework. Yuka is here with us this evening to share on applications of gamification theory. The Octalysis group combined research in game design, motivational psychology, and behavioral economics to better study human behavior and motivation. And they use this research and principles to build a framework to help companies better engage their users. Glad to have Yukai here tonight with us to share more. Yukai, please.
Hello, thanks for having me here. I want to first say that I just got tested positive COVID-19. So if I suddenly cough like crazy or mute myself because I'm coughing, that would be the reason, not because I just suddenly decided I enjoy coffee a lot. But I'd say the COVID party, not as fun as the block party. And with that said, can I get the screen sharing capabilities, please, from one of the co-hosts? All right. Great. So today we're going to talk about harnessing gamification design with Web3. And just a quick teaser of what we're going to talk about. First, I'm going to talk about the Octalysis framework, which is what I'm most known for. We're going to talk about the details of what it entails, how do you design motivation engagement into an experience. We're going to talk about a bit about how to design complex game loops so you don't have just a linear system in your ecosystem. And then we're going to talk about a economy design framework that fits into thinking about utility design, thinking about tokenomics, et cetera, et cetera. But before that, just a quick intro. I'm Yukai Chow, and I've been working in the world of gamification since 2003. So maybe an earlier pioneer in the industry. I've taught my framework a lot of different places like Stanford University, Yale, Oxford, Google, Tesla, IDEO, a lot of places. My design work has empowered over 1 billion user experiences, and I was rated the #1 gamification guru in the world out of the top 100 gamification gurus, 3 out of 4 years. Later on, I became a judge, so that kind of disqualified to be for me being a guru. And on the Web3 front, I was working with the co-founder of Ethereum, Anthony DiOrio, as a chief experience officer, crafting better blockchain experiences back in the day. And for HTC, I was the head of creative labs and head of digital commerce, helping with creating the Vive experience, the VR, AR, and metaverse. Worked with a variety of companies, wrote a book called Actionable Gamification, as mentioned. And so what's interesting is when I was writing the book, I did not have this concept of Web3 at the time. I mean, I did my first metaverse virtual world startup in 2005 and a lot of other things, but I wrote this book. I started writing in 2014. I published in 2016, and it was just very interesting. At one point, a lot of Web3 projects started reading my book. I know at least a handful of billionaires also have been, maybe they're 100 millionaires now because of the market. But then I get approached a lot, and some people on Twitter have quotes like these, like, there are 2 must-read books. One is the 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, which I admittedly haven't read yet, and then my other book, and then the other one is my book, Actionable Gamification. So, I'm just going to go into first about the framework that I'm most known for that I covered. It's called the Octalysis framework, and it basically breaks down all human motivation 8 core drives. And it's called the Octalysis because it's a combination between the word octagon and analysis. So in the inside of the octagon, there's what we call the 8 core drives that motivate all our behavior. And then surrounding the octagon, there's what we call different game design techniques that can bring out those 8 core drives. And what's interesting is that everything we do is based on one or more of these 8 core drives, which means that if there's none of these 8 core drives there's zero motivation, no behavior happens. And what's also interesting is that based on the positioning of that core drive, it has different natures and different consequences. So we're going to talk about later, there's what we call white hat motivation core drives that make people feel more powerful, in control, they feel good. It's on the top here. But there's no sense of urgency. So people tend to procrastinate. And then the bottom core drives, we call the black hat motivation core drives. It makes people feel urgent, obsessed, even addicted, but in the long run leaves a bad taste in their mouths if that's the only motivator, because people feel like they're not in control of their own behavior. And then the left side versus right side, we call them left brain versus right brain core drives, which deal with intrinsic motivation on the right and extrinsic motivation on the left, which we'll talk about more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go through what these 8 core drives are. And then we're going to just explore the different natures. So the first core drive is epic meaning and culling. So this is a drive that says we feel motivated because we're part of something bigger than ourselves. So this is why people, for instance, contribute to Wikipedia. We don't necessarily, we know people don't make money from contributing to Wikipedia, but they don't even advance their careers, update their resumes when they do it. A lot of people spend a few hours every day after work, correcting different articles, changing punctuation, because they believe they're protecting humanity's knowledge, something bigger than themselves. And this is what you see common in games, right? In a game, they'll say, oh, the world's about to end, but somehow you're the only person qualified to save the world. It feels very engaging, thrilling. It's like, oh, if not me, then who? And people go do that. And in fact, this is what carries people forward in the early days of crypto. Even right now with NFTs, we know that the experience is extremely chunky, right? There's a lot of friction. If people want to mint an NFT, well, first of all, they need to go to an exchange and create an account and do the verification with taking your photo and writing stuff, and then increasing your limit. And then you get your first crypto, probably Bitcoin, you're going to transfer Bitcoin to whatever chain you're on, Solana, Polygon, whatnot. Then a lot of people need to now get this new thing called MetaMask, write down their 12-word seed, and they transfer it over. And in the case of Polygon, which is what my company MetaBlocks uses, they need to do the bridge over to the Polygon network, and then you do the minting, and then you do just all this stuff, right? And the Web2 world it's pretty intense, because we know that every step, every click, every text box people should fill in, you're losing 20 to 50% of your users on every step. And so a lot of people say, well, for this NFT project, I spent 7 hours trying to figure this out and set up. And it's just a lot of friction. Now, this is still today. Now imagine 2010, 2012, when Bitcoin first came out. It's not only a lot of friction and the user experience is terrible, or was terrible. It's not even proven. It's not even valuable. No one even knows that, oh, this will make me rich one day. What really carried them forward is that epic meaning and calling, that, oh, just the financial crisis happened, oh, decentralization, we don't trust the government, we don't trust banks, we need to take things in our own hands and be a decentralized force to do this. So and if you remember those days, there's way more headwinds than today. Back in the day, there's all these illegal transactions, drugs, prostitution stuff, that all the hacks were happening to China, also tried to ban, and just all the stuff that we're seeing today happened back in the day, but just more and less proven. Over time, there's banks using this, big institutions there's DeFi around, more people validate it. And so back in the day, what really carries the community forward is that belief that this will change humanity. This is the future. And so epic meaning calling is there whenever you have something like, honor, freedom, those higher themes that make a difference in the world. It's not about personal gain. It's about this bigger vision. You see that in religion and politics too. Core drive 2 is development accomplishment. So this is the drive that says we feel motivated because we feel like we're improving ourselves. We are leveling up. We're achieving mastery. And so all the what we call points and badges that you might see in the gamification world fall into this core drives. Points are just mathematical counters. They give you a sense of progress. So even though you're doing the same things over and over and over again, at least you see this progress bar moving forward, or you see this number growing bigger and bigger, and you feel like you're actually getting somewhere. So for some people, that's like their work. It's like, oh, at my job, I do the same things over and over again every day. Hey, but I see my bank account growing bigger and bigger, and that makes me happy. Badges are what we call achievement symbols. So they symbolize a sense of accomplishment. And achievement symbols can be in many different forms. It could be badges, trophies, uniform changes, crowns. It could be black belt, white belt in the case of martial arts. And of course, later on utilized in Six Sigma, which is quality control in factory settings. But the key thing is that it must symbolize an accomplishment. If you give people a badge for every silly thing you do, then it's just an icon, right? It doesn't have any meaning designed into that icon. And so that's why we don't really ask if projects have badges or not. We ask if the project makes people feel accomplished or not, because the core drive is where the core value, the core emotional value is, as opposed to the game design technique. Core drive 3 is empowerment of creative feedback. So this is basically like Lego. You give users the basic building blocks, and there's an infinite amount of ways for them to utilize different strategies and come with and be creative, see the feedback, and go and adjust. And that's very, very engaging for people. You'll see that this is on the right top of the octagon, which means it's a white hat, right brain intrinsic core drive. It's the longest lasting type of motivation. We call this evergreen mechanics. And so every game in the market that's timeless has this core drive: chess, poker, mahjong, what have you. And so if you just look at a game like chess is a very simple game. There's 64 squares, 32 pieces, and people have been playing for centuries, and it's still fun today, right? Chess doesn't have to be like, hey, every week, here's a new piece, here's a new board, here's a new map, a new hero enters the scene. You know, chess does not need to create new content to be fun, because our brains are entertaining itself. It's like being an inventor or a scientist. You know, lifelong experimentation, it's always going to be engaging. Whereas if you look at some other games that rely on other core drives, the moment you have, like, you stop doing the daily quests, the weekly missions, the monthly new characters, people stop playing those games. And so this is why it's important. Core drive 3 empowerment, creativity, feedback entails into things like self-expression, right? Different avatar changes, different cosmetics, meaningful choices and strategies. So if there's multiple ways to improve and beat the game, as opposed to a linear path, everyone has to do the exact same thing. And the creativity. Core drive 4 is ownership and possession. So this is a drive that says, because we feel like we own something, we want to improve it, we want to protect it, and we want to get more of it. So this obviously deals with things like virtual goods, virtual currencies, NFTs. It's also why we like to collect stamps and baseball cards. And it also has things that are a bit more abstract, like if you spend a lot of time customizing your Facebook profile, Dropbox folders, or LinkedIn profile, you feel more attachment, hence ownership, into that experience. So even if a new technology that comes out that's supposed to be better, you don't want to change, right? Because you feel like that one doesn't understand you, this one does, this one's my system. And in behavioral economics, they call that endowment effect. You can see that some people, they're not sure about NFTs, but once they buy into an NFT and they suddenly become hardcore about, like, oh, this is the best thing ever because of the ownership, endowment effect. And sometimes what's weird in this is sometimes people get rug pulled and they get hurt a lot, and they still try to defend it. And it's like, no, it was just the project leaders that were corrupt and scammers, but the project is still very, very good. And I encourage everyone to still be in the project, because I guess the leaders have left, or now there's new leaders or whatever. They just have this, again, attachment, hence ownership over that experience. And it's hard to move on. Core drive 5 is social influence and relatedness. So this is what people do based on what everyone else says, thinks, or does. And so this are things like collaboration, competition, group quests, gifting, social appreciation. And it also has the relatedness piece. So things like nostalgia. Like if you see a product that reminds you of a childhood, you automatically have a higher chance of buying the product. If you meet someone from the same hometown, let's say you're working abroad, you automatically have a higher chance of striking a deal with that person. Core drive 6 is scarcity and impatience. So this is a drive that says, because we can't have something, we want it even more, or just because it's difficult and we value it. So this is obviously what we see a lot in creating urgency and creating wait lists, whitelist, having limited spots. And Facebook very famously used scarcity tactic, Core drive 6, when it started. At the beginning, Facebook said, well, the Facebook.com is only for Harvard students. So if you didn't go to Harvard University, too bad, you can't use Facebook. Then it says, well, Facebook is open for Harvard, some Ivy League schools, and some other schools that your high school buddies got in, but you were not smart enough to get in. Too bad. And then it opened up to more and more schools. So when it opened up to UCLA in 2004, when I was attending it, everyone rushed into Facebook, not because they already knew how great Facebook was, but it was because of that sheer exclusivity alone, right? It's like, you're not allowed to come in. Okay, now you're allowed to come in, and everyone rushed in. And they basically successfully replicated that result in every single university and later on high school in the US. This core drive is also what a lot of social mobile apps use to monetize. So people will go into a game like Farmville. I tend to like to use very traditional games so everyone understands the example. And they'll say like, oh, this game is kind of fun, but I'll never spend real money in a stupid game like this. And then eventually Farmville starts dangling this mansion in front of your face. And you're like, oh, wow, this mansion is so cool. What I need to do to get this mansion, of course, translate to NFT, modern examples. And then people see like, in this case, right, in the play to earn stuff, or the gaming space, they're like, oh, wow, I need to do 50 hours of farming to be able to afford this mansion. 50 hours, that's a lot of farming, right? Oh, but wait, I just have to spend like 25 hours or $25 and I could get this mansion immediately. So, for $25, I save 50 hours of my time. That's a no-brainer, right? And so suddenly you're no longer spending $25 to buy some pixels on your screen. You're spending $25 to save a lot of your time. And because you're a self-respecting, savvy-worthy professional, it becomes an amazing transaction. So you can see here that how games sometimes alter the way we think about things. And what's interesting here is that technically these games are all free to play. So we play the game for free and we spend money to play less of the game. So how does that make sense, right? Is the game fun or not? If the game is so much fun, why are we spending money to skip the gameplay? And this is later on, we're going to talk about the difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Are you doing for the experience, or are you doing for the result? Because if you do it for the result, you just want to get that as quickly as possible. It doesn't matter if you are cheating, if you're buying your way there, if whatever, you just want to get there, right? If you're all in your NFT community just because you think you'll get rich in 4 months, the moment when you get rich, you're gone, or you feel like I'm not going to get rich here, you're gone. You don't care about the community. But if you are there for the experience, you want it to last as long as possible. You just want to keep playing it. And so, why would you skip all the gameplay, right? Because that's where the fun is at. You don't want to pay and then suddenly go to the places, you beat the game, good job, right? And you just feel like, wait, I actually want to play the game. So this is something about intrinsic or extrinsic that we'll explore further a few minutes down the road. Core Drive 7 is unpredictability and curiosity. So this is basically saying, because we don't know what's going to happen next, we're always thinking about it. And so this obviously deals with things like, gambling systems, mystery box designs, Easter eggs, raffle tickets, a variety of things like that. But it also has, has lighter things like, for instance, why we want to finish a book or a movie, which is why we don't like spoilers, right? We don't want people to tell us how it would end before we're ready for it. When the ball game, it's obvious who's going to win. A lot of people start leaving the stadium, and there's a lot of scientific research behind this, the Core Drive 7 effect. And the most famous one is called the Skinner box. So scientists B.F. Skinner put different animals in a box, rat and pigeon, and inside the box is a lever. And the first experiment is that whenever the animal presses the lever, food will come out. And what you'll see is the animal will constantly, will be pressing the lever until it's no longer hungry anymore, because it just doesn't need food, right? Anymore, it's no longer hungry. It doesn't make, so it's logical. But when they switch the mechanic to the point where whenever the animal presses the lever, food may or may not come out, and sometimes two come out. What you see is that the animal will constantly press the lever, regardless if it's hungry or not, because it's just messing with its brain. Will it come out? Will it come out? Will it come out? And there you have a little bit of gambling addiction right there in the Skinner box. In the early days of gamification, some critics were saying that, oh, giving people points and badges is like putting them in a Skinner box. And if you knew the Octalysis framework, you would know that this statement is imprecise, because points and badges, if done well, is about Core Drive 2 development accomplishment. But the unique insight about the Skinner box is not that points, badges, even rewards create obsessive behavior, it's variable rewards, unpredictable results create obsessive behavior. And that's important to think about when you design. Core drive 8 is loss and avoidance. And so this is basically, you're doing something because you want to avoid a loss. You don't want something bad to happen. This is also the fear core drive. So FOMO, right? It applies here. You're just afraid of losing opportunities. And it's pretty straightforward. It's just the fear core drive. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But the key thing is, again, these are the 8 core drives that motivate all our behavior. It's worth mentioning again that everything we do is based on one or more of these 8 core drives. But it's also graphed on an octagon shape for a reason. The left side, we call them left brain core drives. Doesn't mean it's geographic on the left side versus right side, but they symbolically represent our logical brain versus the right brain core drives symbolically represent the emotional brain. And what's interesting is the left brain core drives deal with extrinsic motivation, things you do for a reward, a purpose, or a goal, but you don't necessarily enjoy the activity itself. So once you obtain the reward, you hit your goals, or the reward becomes stale, you stop doing the activity. Whereas the right brain core drives deal with intrinsic motivation. So things that we just enjoy doing to the point that we're even willing to spend money just to experience it. And even if we lost all our progress the next day, we would still want to do the activity today, like play this basketball game or hang out, because that's how we evaluate our quality of lives. How much time we spend on things we just enjoy doing. Like for instance, a lot of people since middle school, they hang with the same, 2 to 3 friends for sometimes 3 to 4 hours every single day. And there's no reward. There's no points or badges or progress bar. There's no free NFTs, drops, discounts, wait lists. There's nothing, right? But it's evergreen. People just can do that forever, every day. In fact, a lot of working professionals look back to those days fondly and say, oh, I wish I could go back to those days where we just do nothing as friends and just hang out. And so those are just intrinsic joy in our lives. And so most companies do like to design for extrinsic motivation core drives, not because it's better, but it's just because it's easier, right? It's just so much easier to put a reward on an activity you want to see. Give them some money, put them on a wait list, give them a status, a badge, as opposed to making the activity itself more enjoyable and fun. And you do it by giving them more meaningful choices, making it more social, giving them more unpredictable, delightful experiences. But the problem is that left brain core drives have shown to kill right brain core drives sometimes. What does that mean? Let's say I love to draw. I always draw for free. It's my passion. Science have shown that one of the best ways for you to get me to stop drawing is to first pay me to do it. And at the beginning, I'm excited, right? Yay, get paid for my passion. Amazing. And then you get paid me less and less and less, $50, $10, $1, 20 cents. At one point, I'll refuse to draw because, I'm not stupid. I'm not going to draw for 20 cents. Not worth my time. Even though before I met you, I drew for free. So you have transitioned my intrinsic joy of drawing into that extrinsic motivation of making money. And so when the money is not there, I lose interest altogether. And this is what we're going to talk about later. Hopefully we have some time for that. Just like, why is it so important to install meaning and purpose into your Web3 project? Because again, if people are just there for extrinsic motivation, just for the status or the money, getting rich in 4 months, we know that's not going to last. And once there's a down market, everyone just leaves, right? Because and sometimes the project is created with a higher purpose, but then because of the marketing, because of the growth tactics, everyone joins expecting that this is going to be the get rich thing. So they don't really care much about the right brain stuff anymore. They only care about the left brain stuff. Now the top core drives are what we call white hat gamification core drives. So if you're doing something because you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, you're changing the world, pursuing your faith, and you're improving yourself, achieving mastery, and then you're also using your creativity, you feel very, very good. But the problem is there's no sense of urgency. So people procrastinate. You're in full control, so you can do whenever you want. The bottom core drives are called black hat motivation core drives. So if you're always doing something just to avoid a loss, just because you can't have something, or just because you don't know what's going to happen next, it's still extremely powerful in driving our behavior. But in the long run, if that's the only motivator, it leaves a bad taste in our mouths because we feel like we're not in control of our own behavior, and when we can't escape from the system, we won't want to. So again, white hat motivation makes people feel powerful, in control, they feel good, but there's no sense of urgency. Black hat motivation is good for making people feel urgent, obsessed, and even addicted. But in the long run, it leaves a bad taste in the mouth, so they could burn out. White hat motivation is good for things like long-term community management, loyalty programs, a creative employee spaces. Black hat motivation is good for one-time transactions. You just want people to give you their credit cards. You just want them to mint. You want them to donate money, or short bursts of activities. So, so if you have a one-week competition in your company, it could be thrilling, exciting. It's a lot of fun. But if it's a year-long competition, most people don't want to be in a constant state of competing with their colleagues, and it creates a cutthroat environment. A lot of people drop out. In terms of one-time transaction, for example, Booking.com was a client of ours, and they're looking for the one-time transaction, right? So they'll use a lot of black hat core drive. They'll say, oh, there's only 2 tickets left, and there's like 10 people looking at this ticket right now, and you have 5 seconds, 4 seconds, 3 seconds, and like, oh, gotta buy. So people quickly buy. And so people paid money, Booking.com made money, but people may not feel as good about it. They feel they were rushed into it. So it's very important to know how to rebalance that into a white hat experience right after the black hat transaction. And so, design is always about figuring out when these core drives are firing and how do you balance the experience. So you have urgent action with long-term happiness and left brain incentives, and then tying into right brain enjoyment. So when I created this framework in 2012, so I started working in gamification in 2003, or started thinking about it, designing, whatnot. But 2012, I published this framework. I didn't have any aspirations in academia. I just wanted to have a tool to solve problems for myself and clients. But then when I went to Google Scholar about a year ago, saw there's 1,500 different PhD thesis academic journals applying the gamification framework Octalysis into a variety of different things. So just very blessed that this also stands strong academically. And so I think it's very, very strong. So then we go into the NFT content. So as I was talking about, over the past couple of years, I get a lot of invitation to go do advisory, whatnot, to NFTs, because my book became very popular in this space. And I started thinking about, okay, yeah, I think NFTs for anyone, when they first hear about it, it's very intriguing. It's very interesting. Like, oh, so how does, what makes a human justify the behavior spending so much money on these online images, right? And so obviously we have the handy Octalysis to think about it. And so broke down, and later on, we started our own project called MetaBlocks, as I mentioned, which we're gonna use that also as a case study to explain how we implement some of these principles. And so basically NFTs have basically 3 main core drives that is in the center of it, even if you don't think about the full utility of it. So first of all, there's scarcity, right? And I think everyone here is pretty advanced to know the scarcity about NFTs. But I would just say that one thing unique about it is that you still have to trust the developers a lot, right? Because the people who issue these NFTs, they could just issue more if they wanted to. It's like, hey, this is so successful, let's do another 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. Hey, let's create virtual land for the NFTs that we created, right? And so they can just suddenly expand inventory by a lot. So it's almost like the US government. They can just print out cash whenever they want. So sometimes it's like, well, yeah, maybe you don't trust the US government, but would you rather trust 3 anonymous developers who are good at storytelling, right? Are they more trustworthy? Unsure. But that's scarcity, and just again, the developers need to be very trustworthy too, because they can mess with the scarcity if they wanted to. Then there's meaning, right? Epic meaning and calling. And I like to bring up like a friend. I have a friend in Denmark, and he owns a very rugged, broken couch. And even though this couch has no utility and has no cosmetics, he cherishes it greatly because it used to be Winston Churchill's couch. And my friend considers Winston Churchill a war hero. So again, the meaning behind the memory is what makes this item very, very valuable. Even if there's this one of this item in the world, but there's no meaning behind it, people don't care. But if it has unique meaning, people can tell a story around it. It connects to something people care about. Suddenly it's immensely valuable. But then you have the third one, which is community, which is social influence. And so if my friend was the only person who cared about Winston Churchill, then the couch to him is, again, immensely valuable, but he probably can't sell it out to someone else who But if you have a community with 100,000 people all loving Winston Churchill, then my friend can probably sell this couch to someone else who can sell to someone else at a higher price. And so, yeah, so these are the three very important core jobs. Now, most companies, again, are very good at designing for scarcity with all the waitlist stuff and whatnot. They're good at building community, right? But I think what's sorely lacking in the community is the meaning and purpose part. And when you don't build into the DNA of your product, and also through iterative communication, tell people like, hey, why does this project exist? How is humanity better 10, 20 years from now because of this project? Again, people are there just to say, hey, when moon, when are we going to the moon, right? And we know that's not going to, in fact, when moon itself is trying to take something that is about, let's get rich, right? Let's get rich. Some people feel like, it feels a little sleazy, right? Getting rich. Hey, but we're going to the moon. Wow, that's like aspirational. That feels like a higher purpose and meaning we can all get behind and can dream about, right? And so it's talking about the moon is already a little bit of that epic media calling, but it obviously is a fabricated thing, right? It's better to talk about how the real world humanity can actually be better. Most of the time when people make money off of cryptocurrency, it's literally people passing hands, right? Because the cryptocurrency or the NFT is like a vessel usually. Again, if we don't count ones with strong utility that people spend and burn on, people put in money and people withdraw money. People put in and it's dead when everyone withdraws the money that was put in. Right. And so when you see projects that, people lost like 20, or it's like this project, like people lost $20 billion worth of value of money. Well, that $20 billion was just created out of thin air in a sense too, because people threw it in, people withdrew it. So if you lost that much money, someone else made that much money. Right. And we just hope that it's usually not the developers that just took a bunch of it. It's really it's just an exchange of hands in a sense, which is in a sense what Ponzi schemes are called. But also with gold is just people exchanging money. If you buy gold, you expect someone else to buy at the higher price. And so there technically could be a person who is the highest buyer of gold in the world. Like no one will ever buy gold from him at a higher price than what he paid for. That's, because gold by itself, the utility is not as strong as the pricing, at least, which we're going to talk about soon with the little model that I created about economy. And so again, I'm very excited about the blockchain technology, NFT technology. Again, I have a company about it, so I'm not saying that this is correct, but as you know, there's a lot of projects that are not good. I want everyone to be very down to earth and see what's real, what's true, and what's fluff, and then and be smart in maneuvering this world. There are a lot of people getting hurt. There's a lot of projects that are very short-sighted, like they just want to make a quick buck. And then implode. So it's important to see what's real and focus on what's real and be that epic media calling design inside the project. So anyway, so then about half a year ago, my friend and ex-co-founder who works at Google came to me, and he wanted to explore a concept called meta blocks. And so I thought it was one of the best concepts I've heard. And so I joined as his chief experience officer, and we design some things, and we're going to talk about how we incorporate some of these core drives into it. So it's basically NFTs powered by real world places and real life memories. And so the first step is we talk about first thing is scarcity, right? So we thought about, all right, what's truly scarce in the real world? Well, there's gold and there's real estate, but gold is fungible, right? My gold and your gold, we can trade and it doesn't matter. But real estate is truly non-fungible. My home, your home, even if it's the same dimension, if we trade, it's not the same. It has a slightly different location, different convenience, slightly different neighborhood potentially. But most importantly, we have different memories there. I had my first child here. You graduated from your school there. You had parties at your home. I met someone in my home. Different memories. So they're very different. They're truly non-fungible. When you create virtual land, right, in a virtual space, yeah, maybe they're the same, or you can decide how they go. But in the real world, it's just there, and it's also immutable, right? You can't just pretend it doesn't exist. It's there, and it's non-fungible. So what we do is we turn each location in the world, like right now we have San Francisco, Miami, Singapore, we're opening up New York, into NFT. So NFT is a block. And so now there's, even though there's a good amount of plots of land, they're truly unique, right? Some are central downtown, everyone's fighting over. Some are outskirts that no one cares about until like one day someone does, or the center is still crowded. But it's not, we can't fabricate new ones. We can't create new ones. It's just what it is. And so there's Miami, New York. But the most important part is the meaning part. And, there are a few other projects out there that also have the same idea. Hey, why don't we just turn the world into NFTs and just sell these NFTs? But that's not our project was for. Our mission is to preserve humanity's most important memories. Because the reason my co-founder reached out to me is actually saying he realized that Google Photos is starting to charge money now. And he says that, yeah, all this stuff is on a single server. So 30 years later, Google could shut Google Photo, Google Drive down. Dropbox could shut the servers down. They could go out of business potentially. Or our grandchildren might not want to pay for Google Photos. And who wants to pay for their grandfather's, Google Photos forever? So, and then in that case, all our memories are gone, right? Before year 2000, we put out physical photos. That's when you go to like grandma's home, you see these photos, but now they're all digital and they'll be gone. And we know that historically, there's a lot of memories worth preserving, moments in time, things that are inspiring. That defines the human